And welcome everybody to the 33rd edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eric J. Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, the czar of just about everything. And yes, I do have a dead small bunny wrapped around my neck. I don't know what these little fuzzy balls are, but look, we just keep throwing new stuff at you. We have no idea what we're doing. But we do know that we're going to have a guest today. His name is Chris Gold, or is it? We're going to find out. From Gold Law. I am incredibly excited to have him on. You guys are going to love hearing. He's one of the new plaintiffs lawyers, bringing a lot of cases, someone you really need to get to know, and you're going to get that opportunity today. But before we get to that, who do we have? We'll start with you.
Hi, guys. My name is Britney Andre. I'm a partner at Troutman & Mean, also known as the Baroness of TCPAWorld.
She is the lovely Baroness. It's wonderful to have you. Hand down all the way to the right.
My name is Tori Gry. I'm an attorney at Troutman & Mean and the Dame of TCPAWorld.
The wonderful Dame, still a blonde. We're working on it. Last but not least, who do I have?
Hello, folks. Queenie of TCPAWorld, also Puja Amin, a partner at Troutman & Mean.
So not only do we have fuzzy bunnies around our necks, we have not been with you folks in like 3 months. I wish there was a legitimate excuse for that. Frankly, there just is not. And there's so much to cover that we can't possibly cover all in one podcast. So we're going to start putting together podcasts again more frequently. Today, I'm really excited to have Chris Gold come on. But let's talk through some of the big developments. First and most importantly, the Law Conference of Champions. By the time this is up, the Law Cock,
The Law Cock?
I mean, the Law Cock. It works. It works. Okay. The Law Conference of Champions. He's like, no.
Danny's quitting over there. I can't.
This is so. It's the champions. Like you just gonna see the spike in our like huge stats. As you go through the roof. Law Conference of Champions. It's literally gonna be like 2 weeks away by the time this airs. You've got to get out there. Honestly, it'll probably be sold out by the time this airs. But you can still attend virtually no matter what. It's a great show. We've got just a tremendous lineup. 20 speakers. I mean, really, there's something, never been anything like it. I did a prep today on the lead gen panel. I mean, we've got Chris Hurld from EverQuote. We've got Heather Enslow. I mean, she's the general counsel of Lending Tree, for God's sake. She's going to be on a panel. We've got Andrew Bach, who's out of Veterans United. And of course, we've got the Manny from Quote Velocity, who's just an absolute legend. And that's just one panel. I mean, this is nuts how incredible this show is going to be. If you're not there, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, to say you're missing out, I mean, it's just like obviously missing out. It's like you're choosing self-harm at that point. Like, you really, I thought you got to be institutionalized or something to knowingly miss this show. But I'm really excited. I can't wait to see everybody. Honestly, the challenge is going to be we've got so many people coming in, so many people that we care about, that we want to spend time with. You know, everyone's coming from the East Coast for this show, and it's going to be really challenging, to be honest with you. We're not going to get to see everybody spend as much time with people as we want, but you all are going to get to see this incredible show that we're putting on, and trust me, this is the best show we've ever done. Like, there's no question about it. It's probably one of the best shows that anyone's ever done if we execute. Now, look, it's high pressure, it's high stakes, but I think we're going to be up for it. We're going to find out. So many little TCPA developments we should be chatting through. I'm not going to be able to catch up on everything right now. I just have a great podcast with Mike Farie. Hopefully it's up on a YouTube channel. If not, you can just Google Mike Farie, Eric Troutman webinar, and it's up right now on his website. And we covered like 10 different important TCPA topics. We're not going to cover that many today. I do want to talk to you. What I think is the biggest news right now is Nommo Robo, which is one of these call blocking apps that has this massive honeypot, like over 200,000 cellular phone numbers that it has in its ownership. And it uses these phone numbers to basically monitor and analyze calling traffic out there, so it knows what kind of call volumes there are. And most importantly for its users, it can better detect robocalls, right? Bad calls, spam calls, scam calls. It listens to voicemails that are left, and it tries to figure out exactly like who's out there, what numbers are calling are scam, what numbers are legitimate, so that it can help its users to properly block the right phone numbers. Great, that sounds like an ad for Nommo Robo. Why am I talking about this? Because they've got 200,000 phone numbers, and guess what they just decided to do? Last week, they decided to file a TCPA class action based upon calls to their honeypot numbers against Synchrony Financial, seeking about $1 million in damages for just over 2,000 pre-recorded calls that were made without consent. Now, you might be thinking, well, hey, that's interesting, but $1 million lawsuit, like, we see those every day. What's the big deal? Well, time out. That's just one lawsuit that they are filing. And if you think about it, they've got 200,000 cell phone numbers. How many TCPA violative calls do you think they receive a day? Probably north of about 500,000 calls a day. You multiply that times $1,000 for a call, right? You're talking about what, like $50 billion in damages a day? Like, this is wild. It is insane how extremely high the damages are in these TCPA cases. And you take, I don't know if it's 5 billion, might have added a zero, it might be 50 billion or 5 billion. Let's just say it's 5 billion. That's per day, right? You're talking about 35 billion damages per week, and you're talking about $140 billion in damages a month. I mean, you're talking $1 trillion in damages over a 4-year period that this company is able to now go out there and collect. This is one of the most valuable companies in the world all of a sudden. I mean, there's only 4 or 5 companies in the world that have $1 trillion valuation, and apparently Nommo Robo is one of them, assuming that they can get their case off the ground. And that's the big question, is do they have standing to sue? Now, back in 2015, when the great and powerful Czar took out the Stoops lady, remember Melody Stoops? She had 80 phones, not 200,000, 80. And on behalf of Wells Fargo, we brought some motion work, and we got her thrown out because she had manufactured her own harm. So that same body of law prevented Nommo Robo from bringing a case back in 2015 when the last time it tried it. Now, 10 years later, it's going to try it again. Now, its position this time is, wait a second, we actually do suffer some damage here, right? We spend money putting these things together. There's IT infrastructure, there's expense, there's battery charge, there's electricity. Like, this is not a zero-sum game. Now, of course, I look at this and I say to myself, wait a second. You're using these phones for analytic purposes to determine, what the call volumes look like, to basically enhance your product. So to say that you've been harmed when the phone call actually helped you as the service provider to provide a better service to your customer, that's very challenging for me to accept. If I'm a judge, I'm throwing this case right out, right? But I could see the appeal. And again, because these are honeypot phone numbers, these numbers don't belong to anybody. The fact that Synchrony called these numbers over 2,000 times with a robocall, that's interesting, right? That's interesting. Like, why are they doing that? Because they shouldn't be. Now, honestly, it could be a bunch of wrong numbers. We know that numbers recycle, right? The users of the phone that the honeypots took over might have been Synchrony customers. They might have provided the phone number. Synchrony might not be using the reassigned numbers database, and boom, they're caught by this honeypot. So again, and Nommo Robo is not only, it doesn't even have the biggest honeypot out there. Umails is even bigger, is my understanding. And I think like Amazon's got a big one. Our buddy Joe over at Caller ID Reputation has a big one. I mean, there are some huge honeypots out there. And if all of these can suddenly be actionable in TCPA cases, I am telling you guys, like, these are going to be insanity. Like, billions of dollars in damages are going, and not theoretical damages, in actual TCPA settlements are going to result from these ridiculous honeypots. And you know what's going to happen? People are going to go out there and start investing in honeypots, right? I mean, why not? I'm going to go start a call blocking app tomorrow. Literally, tomorrow, if Nommo Robo gets away with this. And yes, I will nominally have a call blocking app, and I'll put it up on the App Store, right? But trust me, I am going to be cashing in on TCPA class actions at Scoop. It's the only thing that's going to take the Czar. The Czar's going to go to the other side. I'm going to go to the other side. No, I won't. But I will buy stock in a business that will do this, because this is a money minting machine. Now, hopefully, this doesn't happen, because it's just insanity, right? It's just insanity. But the need to avoid calling these honeypots is more important than ever before. And it's already been important because, of course, Nommo Robo and Umail and companies like them, they're like the biggest narcs in the world, right? They get notification of a potential scam or spam, or potential notification of a phone call that they think might be unwanted. What do? They notify the industry traceback group. The ITG gives you a ticket. You might end up in the paws of the DOJ or the state or the what is it? They got 51 state multi-state robocall task force that they have now, right? Any of these entities, any of these regulators might get a hold of data from Umail and Nommo Robo, right? So you already don't want to be calling honeypots, but if you can get sued directly by Nommo Robo in addition, my goodness, man, it's just lights out. It's just such a big deal. Of course, nobody's talking about it, but we are, because it's massive. So it's something you have to be like really, really, really aware of. Big enterprise, keep this in mind, right? If you're going to go after companies with money, right? If you are a Fortune 500 and you're making outbound calls, you could be in harm's way. right? You could be a harm flag. That's it. That's what I've got for you. God, there's so much else we could be talking about, but I want to talk about that, and so I have. Baroness, what do we got?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the California Senate Bill 690, which is what everybody seems to talk about in the privacy sector. This was introduced by Democratic Senator Ana Caballero, and its purpose was to curb the dramatic increase in CIPA litigation. But before we dive into the details of SB 690, I kind of want to give you folks like the background and history as to why CIPA was enacted in the first place, so you could see the evolution of these claims and understand why SB 690 was enacted in the first place. During World War II, the FBI was granted an expansive amount of authority to engage in wiretapping so that they can investigate national security threats.
Or just find communists. Yeah, whatever.
That also. And public officials back then were not prohibited from engaging in wiretapping either. So, the FBI and the public officials were abusing their authority and wiretapping of numerous individuals and businesses that they didn't like. So CIPA was enacted to sort of regulate this conduct. But it's interesting when you take a step back, you look at the cases that were initially filed, they were mainly against like police officers and criminal cases, right? The statute was being applied very narrowly. But as we've seen sort of like in the TCPA, the application of the statute has expanded tremendously. I mean, now it's being applied to web session recordings and web session analytics and chat boxes and trackers. And that's what makes it such a dangerous statute. On top of that, the statutory penalties are through the roof. I mean, we're talking about $5,000 per violation, and that's 10 times more than the $500 per call under the TCPA, right? So I think that's what makes it so attractive from the plaintiff's bar, right? And they're gravitating towards these CIPA suits. And in a pivotal case, the Javier versus Active Prospect, right? You have the Ninth Circuit holding that Active Prospect's trusted form may constitute wiretapping under California law. So ever since I think that case was handed down, you have a lot of these plaintiffs' bars gravitating towards filing suits alleging claims for violations of, web session reportings and the analytics and trackers and cookies and the like. So fast forward to now, the Senate bill S690 was introduced to sort of curb this litigation. It was introduced an exemption so that you can use these technologies for a commercial business purpose. But what is a commercial business purpose? They define it under the session, and I believe it's almost a copycat definition of the California Privacy Act. Is that right?
CCPA.
CCPA. And they define it as the processing of personal information either performed to further a business purpose or subject to a consumer's opt-out rights. What does that mean? I don't really know. So it would be interesting.
Fraud.
Yeah, it's fraud.
Very broad.
It'd be interesting to see if this bill is passed and to see what the plaintiff's bar is going to do with that. It's interesting to note that also when this bill was introduced, there was a retroactive provision so that all cases pending January 1st, 2026, before that, they would have all essentially neutralized. But I think it got sharp criticism from the plaintiff's bar, so they struck that out of the bill. That's no longer happening. So the bill is passed in the Senate, and now it's with the Assembly, and it's in their hands, sort of on pause right now. We're not too sure what they're going to do with it, but come to LCOC. I'm going to be talking about it more. I'm going to have a panel that's discussing it, and yeah.
LCOC, is that the same thing as LCOG? I just
You said LCOG. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not just saying that.
Piggyback on what Brittany said, one thing I wanted to add, the amount of CIPA cases and demands that our firm is receiving, it's up the roof, right? And these are frivolous demands, frivolous lawsuits. I hate these cases because they just have no weight to them, in my opinion. But more importantly, the craziest thing is look back to the state call recording statutes, right? We have your one-party states and then you have your two-party states. California is essentially now going to become a one-party state if you have that commercial business purpose. Yeah. That's huge because most businesses operating, even before the Active Prospect and the web session recording cases came, before that, a lot of businesses were struggling with just the call recording statute piece of it, right? And businesses are required essentially to provide that disclosure on every single call, every agent. It's in their scripts, or at least it should be, right? And huge businesses, huge mortgage companies, Wells Fargo, Cap One, all these folks have faced these big lawsuits when it comes to CIPA. And now California has kind of not just ripped away from the web session recording piece of it, right? That has applied to websites. But they have also taken away the two-party consent call recording portion.
Yeah.
And that is a huge step away from, their previous guidance. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes out.
California is going from one of the most restrictive, if not the most restrictive privacy state to the least restrictive privacy state. Like it just comes through. I mean, what the hell are these guys doing?
I don't know.
have no idea.
That's wild. To me, that's wild. But I mean, it really does. If it shows you anything, it does show you that there ultimately is like this critical mass where if the plaintiff bar gets too out of control, let's be real, right? Like, Josh, you're out of control, man. I'm going to say, oh gosh, I'm not going to get too mean to you because you're going to be my guest in my home. But man, like, thousands and thousands of these demands that are all shakedowns, and these small businesses are getting hammered for using a pixel, which everybody uses. Like, no harm, no foul. Like, shut down the internet. Why don't you? Right? I mean, they pushed too far. They got too greedy. And now the legislature is responding. Now, of course, like the legislature just we don't put lawyers, we don't put intelligent people, we don't put smart people out there, and so they keep doing dumb stuff. So now, rather than actually just address the issue, they just like slapped a couple things together, borrow some language from their statute, didn't really think it through, and now it's like the exact opposite extreme. It's like, wait a second. Now, I mean, if I go and I put my recording device in my competitor because I want to know what they're doing, that's illegal all of a sudden.
For business purpose.
It's for business purpose.
Yeah.
My business purpose is I want to know what my competitor is doing. Like, that's crazy.
Do we have any competitors?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. I've thought about that. But yeah, I mean, just like, it boggles my mind. You guys know I have political ambitions, but just like moments like this, I'm like, my God, I just need to go everywhere. I need to go to Sacramento. I need to go to DC. I just need to crack people's heads together and be like, guys, stop being dumb. Here, tell me what you want to do. I'll do it for you. I'm like ChatGPT, only for legislators. It's just like the weirdest thing. Anyway, great breakdown, Britt. I appreciate you. Tori, what do we got?
So I have a case out of Arizona. It's Cofe versus Fast Easy Offers. Now, the ruling here was that offers to buy are not telephone solicitations. And this is simply because telephone solicitation requires that it requires encouragement of the plaintiff to buy a service, a good, or rent something. And an offer to buy a house, like in this, was not an offer for not a telephone solicitation. Now, this case is interesting because it comes after the Jantz v. Home Run Offers case from the same jurisdiction, which ruled the same way, except this case actually addressed the argument that's been out there regarding an effective fee. This is essentially the person getting the offer to buy is getting a reduced amount of money by agreeing to let whoever is calling them and offering to buy their house, allowing them to use, their company to achieve that. Now, the judge just essentially said that it just simply doesn't fit definition telephone solicitation, and she's going to stick with the exact, statutory definition here, and plaintiff's grievances with Congress, not with the court and not with the defendant.
Well, ironically, it wouldn't be with Congress because Congress never actually passed that enactment. That has come through the FCC. No, the court did say Congress. It's not your mistake. It's actually the court's mistake. But so I think here the key is the distinction between buying activity and selling activity. And essentially what the court said was if what the consumer is being invited to engage in is buying activity, then it's not a solicitation. It is a solicitation. If they're being asked to engage in a selling activity, then it is not a solicitation. So when I call you and I'm like, hey, Tori, sell me your house, I'm soliciting you to sell me something, not to buy something from me. And therefore, under the statutory definition, actually against the Code of Federal Regulations definition, that is not a solicitation. So the distinction between buying activity and selling activity is pretty concrete. It's black and white. It's easy to apply. So I like to see that. And you're right. The court did kind of brush aside or reject the issues that make other courts struggle with this issue, which is, hey, I'm the caller. I'm going to get paid either because I'm going to buy your house for under market or I'm going to sell your data and get paid for your data to somebody else who's going to try to come in with the effective fee and sell your house for less than market. So where a caller is basically profiting from a phone call, You would think that's a solicitation, but by definition, it is not. So I think the court got that right. Good cover. Good job, Tori. Appreciate you. And over to you, Miss Queenie.
So Miss Queenie, as you folks know, you folks that watch podcasts, read blogs, and have seen me speak at conferences, I'm a compliance wonk. I love compliance. I was in-house at Loan Depot. It is something that I love to do. But a part of that also comes with, you have to keep up with the law. You have to keep up with the cases that are coming out. And for you folks who have been watching TCPAWorld, been watching our podcast, know that the new revocation rules that took place in April of this year had huge changes, right? There's still some pending changes that are coming next year. It's still on hold. But for purposes of this podcast, I want to talk about the limited time you have to revoke, to process a revocation. Previously, you had 30 days, right? Since April 2025, you now have 10 days to be able to process a revocation from a consumer. Now, a really interesting case that just came out recently, Hewitt versus I Buy Direct. I like eyeglasses. The court actually looked at the reasonable standard of processing a revocation, right? So the law is that you have to there has to be some type of unreasonableness as to why the defendant did not process the revocation. The plaintiff has to show that there was some unreasonableness on part of the defendant's part in not processing that. So in this I Buy Direct case, the plaintiff received 3 text messages within 9 days, 7 business days. And, that seems, at the time the case was filed, the 30-day revocation period was still intact. So looking through the lens of the 30 days, the court looked at the limited amount of text messages in a reasonable period of time, which was that 7-period time frame, and the court said that was not unreasonable on part of the defendant. And the case was outright dismissed at the pleading stage. Now, this is huge because it's important to realize that the court was looking at the defendant's actions. Also, they used the defendant's actions to assert whether the defendant had an internal DNC policy or not. Mm-hmm. Right? So as you folks know, if you're doing telemarketing, if you're doing solicitations, you need to have a DNC policy. It's something I preach about all the time, right? It doesn't have to be super robust. If you're a small if you're a small company, like a marketing company, you can have a pretty simplified DNC process versus if you're in a large enterprise, you're probably going to have more nuance into your DNC policy. It really just depends on your operations. But one thing you do need to have is a simple statement that you will comply with that 10-day period of following revocation requests. Back then, it was probably, you probably had 30 days. So, it's a huge takeaway that just having an internal DNC policy is easy enough to have, but also courts look at, whether you're actually reasonably following that DNC process, whether your policy has reasonable standards, right? These are things that are going to get into the court's hands eventually if you are sued under a revocation case. So, little things like, just tweaking your DNC policies or auditing it every 3 months or every 4 months, that's something that you should look at depending on how the courts are ruling around these new revocation cases. Revocation cases back 5-6 years ago, they were being filed immensely, right? They were similar to how the pre-recorded cases are just flowing in right now. Now, I suspect after April 2025, it's already happening. We've blogged about it on TCPAWorld.com numerous times since April. And, I suspect that they're going to start rolling through, right? And for you folks who have policies that you haven't looked at in the last year, 2 years, 5 years maybe, probably go back and at least insert that, hey, we follow revocation requests within 10 days. And if you're not following revocation requests in 10 days, you probably ought to match your procedures with your policies and your policies with your procedures.
It's actually a really interesting point because people forget failing to have a proper policy is in and of itself actionable.
Correct.
If that in and of itself is a violation, every phone call you make without the correct, not just a policy, a correct policy is technically $500. Even if the call is completely legal, technically that call is made in violation of the law, which is fascinating. And your I Buy Direct case, which was really interesting, is this person apparently was not on the DNC list, right? No. So they could only succeed in the case if they convinced the court at the pleading stage that the defendant lacked a policy. And essentially what the court said was, well, wait a second, because the messages stopped within 7 business days, I can't infer the lack of a policy from that, right? The plaintiff said, the fact that they kept texting at all after it stopped shows a lack of a policy. And the court said, no. We're talking about a policy here. They stopped within a week. That sounds to me like a policy that actually does comply with the rules. But Puja's point is dead on, right? If your policy, that was just at the pleading stage, but if they really didn't have a policy, well, they were violating the law. They might have got away with it, but they were violating the law. If the policy wasn't correct based on the words of the CFR, again, maybe you get away with it, but you're violating the law. So you want to make absolutely sure that you're doing this the right way. In fact, if you have a policy that has not been updated since April, you have to update it. Like, that's a really big takeaway. I love that. And Puja, it's funny because I hadn't even thought of that. So you're the compliance.
I do it every day.
I'm the right. So there it is. I'm going to do a TCPA blog on that like tomorrow. That's a beautiful thing. All right. So we ran a little bit long so far, but that's okay. It was great. You had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. And speaking of fun, now through the power of the Troutman Amin LLP law firm, we're pleased to bring you an interview with Chris Gold of the Gold Law Firm. And now, everyone, through the power of the Troutman Amin LLP law firm, I bring you an exclusive interview with Chris Gold of Gold Law. How good of a name is that? Joining us here on the Deserve to Win podcast. Chris, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Chris, so I got to tell you, Gold Law, that sounds very slick. Now, you just got very fortunate, though, because your last name is Gold. Like, how lucky are you going through life with a last name like Gold?
All right. So actually, so Gold was not my the name I was born with. I'm Brazilian. My last name is Martins. But growing up, I know my father now. I didn't know my father growing up, so I didn't have a real attachment to the name. And then, do you know the White Stripes, the band, the White Stripes?
Yeah, sure. They rock.
Jack White, he took his wife's last name. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So White is his wife's last name. So I always had that in my consciousness of something that some people do. And I ended up getting married back in, 2016. I'm divorced now, but I got married to this girl and her last name was Gold. And when it came time to change names, she made a joke about, she really liked her last name and she joked about whether I would just take her last name. And I thought, well, I don't really have a connection with my last name. I have a brother and sister and mom, and I grew up in a house where everyone kept their own last name. So we had 5 last names on a mailbox. So I really like the idea of having kind of a clan unified under a common name. So I thought, I'm starting my family. Let's have a name that has more of a connection. And her father, he was a man I really respected. He was a Vietnam War vet, just a real man. And I thought it would be a good idea for that. And then also I'm an attorney. And I thought it would be good for marketing because my last name is Martins, Chris Martins. Do you know who Chris Martins is, or Chris Martin? Singer of Coldplay.
The singer.
So if you were to Google Christopher Martin or Martins, you would get caught up in the search results for Coldplay and you would never find my website. So now we got divorced and I had already been using the name for a while, built up the identity and I kept it. So that's what it is now. So I did not go through my whole life as Christopher Gold. But now that's who I am.
What's amazing is as if I knew that, but actually I didn't know that. So first question on my mouth, I stumble upon Gold, quite literally. So Chris, if I were a lesser man, I would make fun of you for having taken your ex-wife's name and being stuck with it. But I'm the czar, and instead I'm going to applaud you because, look, Tom Cruise was not born Tom Cruise, right? So, taking on a name like Chris Gold, that's pretty slick, man. I'm not going to lie to you. That's pretty good. Now, I got lucky because Troutman is a strong name in the law. Now, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, it wasn't good to be last name Troutman because it was fish this and slimy that, and I was like, come on, guys, knock it off. But now it's a very good thing. So Gold Law, awesome. Now, I've got to ask you before I go any further, though, because you've got this mustache now, and this was new. When I knew you, 2 years ago, you didn't have a mustache. Just right now you've got this mustache. Now, is this a temporary thing for the month of June? Is this real? Tell me about the mustache.
Well, I'm a law firm owner now, so I do need to give off an aura of authority. So with the mustache, I feel I do that. And is it a once in a while thing or a full-time thing? I kind of go with the vibe. I had it for a while. I actually just put it back on yesterday. I didn't know that. So I think it worked out perfectly.
So is this like the Mr. Potato Head thing?
You just take it off and then put it back on.
Hey man, if you could change your last name, you have to be able to change facial features as well. Got to be a community fit in.
I'm imagining you've got a little hole right in the middle of your lip. You just put this thing on, you take it off, you put some lips on.
Or take a sticker.
That's for the soul patch. I pulled the soul patch.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so Chris, it's fantastic though that you're out on your own, because before, like, walk me through it, and because you were with, you were with Seamus? Like, who were you with before, and then you started your own shop?
I was working with Scott Edelsberg, Edelsberg Law, but as you know, Scott and Andrew, they work together on most cases. So I worked with that crew, Garrett Berg, who you know, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the TCPA. That's where I started really, falling in love. It took a while, now I would say I did fall in love with it, but that was the start of my exposure. I started my career at a big firm called Robbins, Geller, Rudman and Dowd. They did a lot of securities class action work and a lot of consumer class action work. And that's where I learned what a class action was. I was very fortunate to work on really big cases with the best lawyers in the country, not only on my side, but on the defense side. You learn so much from the people you're against, just as much as the people you're alongside. I was able to work on really sophisticated issues. It was all really great, but the cases were very large. There were multi-district litigation cases, huge classes, and it's a large firm. It was a large organization with 200 people. So I just felt really kind of removed from, the practical impact and the reality of my work. I was just kind of holed up in an office, which was great. I really developed my skill set. But coming from, I mentioned I'm Brazilian, coming from kind of an immigrant background, my entire family were entrepreneurs, as a lot of immigrant families. And that was something that was always in my blood. It's something I always wanted to do, but I first wanted to master the craft, where you never truly master it. But I definitely wanted to get to a point where I was satisfied with my skills. Robbins Geller was an amazing place to do that. But I always had the dream to start my own firm. And, that vision changed in different ways as, before I went to law school, during law school, after, as I learned what the law involves, what type of opportunities are out there, my vision for what I would be doing changed. I wanted to work on smaller cases that I could really manage and have my impact really, affect people and have closer contact with, I think the client contact word is a little cliche, but just, I don't know, feel closer to the impact of my work. Then I learned a little bit about the TCPA, and the TCPA is a really interesting statute. I think it's a statute that a lot of larger firms shy away from. I don't know if they think it's less prestigious or what, but that's just the case. So I kind of transitioned to the Edelsberg Seamus operation, where they focus a lot on TCPA. So I became really involved in it. And, I really, really was drawn to it. I think I really like how the TCPA, it's sophisticated in its simplicity. It seems like a very simple statute, and a lot of people will argue with you that it is, and they'll think, you'll have lawyers, you'll be up against lawyers who are amazing lawyers, no doubt about it, 20-year veterans, 30-year veterans. And, I tell them, hey man, no offense, but if you're not working on TCPA every day and seeing how it changes every day, like, you're out of your league. This is a very deceptively sophisticated statute. And that really scratches my intellectual itch. I love that. I love the impact that you could have with the results of your work. There are, we could get into it, but there are people who this actually makes a difference for. And it just turned out to be, when I went off on my own, the opportunity arose and I jumped at it, but I wasn't planning on focusing just on TCPA. I branded myself as a consumer protection firm, which is what I grew up doing, so to speak. And I still take those types of cases, but the TCPA cases have just overrun, and they've been really drawn to me. And I'm just loving every single day of it. I'm loving building the business. I'm loving working with clients. I'm loving working with colleagues, like a lot of the same players I worked with before. I'm still working with. I love working with, sophisticated defense counsel like yourself, Eric. When your name inevitably comes up in conversations, people ask about you, and I tell them, I respect Eric because he's a specialist in this statute, whereas so many other defense lawyers, they try to get by on their reputation that's not TCPA specific. And I don't know, I just like that you respect it so much, and you're obviously a great lawyer. So again, going back to kind of my experience at Robbins Geller, working with people on my side, working with great lawyers on your side, and being able to really kind of determine my direction, where I'm going, where my firm's going, who I'm helping, what types of cases I'm taking. It really is a dream come true. Like I said, it was always my dream, and I couldn't have imagined it turning out better than it has so far.
You use that word prestige. And it makes me chuckle. It makes me chuckle because there's no more prestigious area of law than the TCPA. It's 100% federal court class litigation. It moves at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The stakes could not possibly be higher. You're talking about multi-billion-dollar cases and the biggest stage that the law has to offer in federal court. And we look at firms like Skadden Arps. I mean, for God's sake, they went off and made a huge investment, bringing in a top-tier TCPA team. Squire Patton Boggs had done the same at the time they brought me over. I mean, you can go through the international law firms, AmLaw 10s, AmLaw 25s, that have made major investments trying to chase firms like Troutman Amin to try to come to bat, to their credit, with real expertise under the TCPA, unlike so many others, right? And of course, the big law model, in my opinion, is absolutely broken. It's something we really should talk to the FTC about. You've got one partner pitching another partner to a client, never telling the client, hey, I'm going to get a big cut. I'm going to get 33%, which is usually what happens, of the revenue this other partner is going to generate. They don't even disclose that. They're just like, oh yeah, this guy's great at the TCPA. This partner's probably handled 3 or 4 cases under the TCPA. They don't know anything about the TCPA relative to us, right? Sure, they might be somewhat thoughtful and they might be pretty good lawyers, but as you said, man, you walk into this world, you walk into a court in a TCPA class action against a guy like Chris Gold, against anybody that actually knows what they're doing on the defense side, or on the plaintiff side, you're going to get smoked. Like, you are going to get smoked. And it happens every single day. And at least once a week, we are getting a phone call from a new client who got beat up by big law, spent more than $500,000, $1 million in fees, couldn't move. It happens all the time with Peronic. Peronic, I think he's just like specializing in like jerking around big law firms right now. Like he just like will not give. I don't know this, but I feel like he's just not giving them a demand. And so he's just forcing them to go to class certification. And again, Peronic will beat those guys. He'll beat them 8 times out of 10 on cert, right? Greenwald will beat them 10 times out of 10 on cert. Like, that's crazy. Like, these are big law firms. People are spending $1 million on this case, and they're getting beat like 90% of the time. Like, it's nuts, right? They come to us. Peronic's like, all right, yeah, we'll settle the case. Because why would he want to go against us, where he's now got an 80% chance of losing? Maybe not 80, like 65%. I think if he was on here, he'd admit, right? We've got a 2/3 chance of beating him in most certifications. He'd admit that. But yeah, your point is incredibly well taken. You're wise to be sticking with the TCPA because let's be real, right? Tav Gomez used to say of the TCPA, it's like eating steak and caviar for dinner every night because it's so intellectually stimulating, it moves so quickly, and the stakes are so high. As a plaintiff's attorney, I mean, look, I don't know what it's like to be a plaintiff's lawyer. I've never been a plaintiff's lawyer. But you've got to vet your case. You got to make sure it's a legitimate case. But if you've got a legitimate case of a guy that received, let's say, a pre-recorded call when he shouldn't have, or a text message that he shouldn't have received, man, like that case is gold. To use use your name, buddy. That case is gold. And I don't know, man. Walk me through, what's your intake? I've never been on the plaintiff side. Now that you've got your own firm. Like, how are you evaluating these cases? How are you valuing these cases if you're willing to share? Like, which cases are you deciding, I'm going to push this all the way? Which cases you're like, you know what? I'm going to try to get a nice, tasty 5-figure settlement on this one and build a war chest for the next one. Like, help me, share what you can. I know you're not going to be able to share everything, but share what you can. I think I'd be really interested for the viewers.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I may be a little bit of an outlier because I'm business minded and I'm building a business, and you have to make more decisions like that. Like, which are you going to settle to build a war chest, as you say, and which are you going to take the long game. But for me, honestly, a big driver of mine is just intellectual curiosity, stimulation, and really, the way I see it, for a case to really go long on. Well, let's back up. It depends on a lot of factors. You have the client. Some clients are, and I know there's criticisms about the TCPA, like in anything in life. Are there people who are, not, it's not really a big deal, sure. But there are a lot of people, and this is something that really made me kind of fall in love with it more. Like, I had an old lady, sweet old lady, client of mine, my favorite client. She was receiving like 300 phone calls, from a company. And she was like really tortured about this, and it just made me feel really good to help her out and get a result. So in a case like that, the first criteria is, what is the client's kind of interest in the case? If it's if it's a client that, I think there's a lot of good that is done through the class action tool, more widespread societal good, changes in business practices. But at the end of the day, we plaintiffs lawyers represent clients, and you want to do the best for your client. And sometimes a class action is mentally stimulating and as fun as that could be against the right defendants. That's not the way to go. So that's kind of the first driver. I evaluate really the personal stake that the client has in the case. The other one I have to evaluate is, obviously the law, even though there's and when I look at the case, putting aside if it's like more of an individual issue for the client, if I'm looking class wide, I've been doing class actions my whole career since 2010. And I'm realistic about it. There are a lot of issues that, even if it's not a quote unquote individualized issue under Rule 23, objectively speaking, there are a lot of issues that can really muddy up the waters when you're going class certification. And there comes a point where the volume of those many risks just outweighs the potential benefit that you're going to certify class. So you have to do a really good job up front of evaluating the facts of the case and how realistic it is for you to get a clean class certification. Because to me, that's really important. I also respect the state of the law. I don't want to be responsible for creating any bad law on any complex issues if I don't have the right case for it. And then the other thing is, even if you have all of the other stars aligned, you need a client, a defendant who can pay a class settlement, and a lot of, unfortunately, these shady lead generation companies that you see a lot in the TCPA, these are like fly-by-night companies. You're not going to get a lot of money. So, and sometimes it's not really fair because my client did receive a lot of text messages and the defendant is just not going to be able to afford even the statutory damages for the client. So that probably didn't tell you a whole lot specifically, but that's honestly the way I evaluate things. My vision in every case is to take it all the way to class certification and get a class settlement. That's what I love, what I've been doing. But I'm practical in the realities of the practice and of the needs of my client.
Do you look at the opposing counsel at all? Because Peronic has been very vocal. That's like one of his number one criteria. And Greenwald has been very vocal. Abbas has been very vocal. But some of the younger guys, the guys that have only been you've only started your firm like this year, right? I mean, this is relatively new for you.
Sure, it's been a year, yeah.
Yeah. So do you have the background now in terms of who's out there, who's not out there? Does that factor in, or are you still in the I'm just going to look at the law, look at my judge, I'm going to look at my client's needs, but I'm not going to focus on what opposing counsel is looking like?
So I probably have an unconventional answer for that as well. Maybe it's not the wisest answer, but you may not know this. Before I was a lawyer, before I became a lawyer, I was pursuing a career as a professional fighter in MMA. I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've done fights in the cage. So I have that inherently in me. I also inherently in me, I have this character trait. I know people talk about, especially on the plaintiff's bar, this whole thing about, David and Goliath, and it's a little cliche now, but honestly, that's an image that has always really resonated for me in my life. I've always stood up to bullies. Even before I became a fighter, I didn't know how to fight. I would get beat up. My first fight ever, I must have been 7 years old, and I was playing with a ladybug on the playground, and she fell to the ground, and some much bigger kid came up by and stomped on the ladybug. I became so furious that I wanted to kill this kid. And I just started pounding my little fists on his chest. And I saw that I was doing no damage because he was literally twice my size. So then I start pinching his skin to try to get some reaction. And the kid just turns around, decks me in the eye. So I was like a 6-year-old kid with a black eye that big. But so that's to say, look, I just inherently like to fight. And footnote, when I say fighting, a lot of people don't realize this. They see fighting, they think it's, just brawn and being tough, but it's a extremely intellectual sport. So some of the best fighters in the world are some of the smartest people you'll meet. It's very cerebral, very intellectual. So when you mix, the fight of litigation with the inherent fighter nature that I have, together with the desire to stand up to bullying or perceived bullying, if I see a defense counsel on the other side that's a little bit aggressive with me or my client, that makes me want to dig in a little bit more and pursue the case more. That's kind of my answer. That's the way I evaluate defense counsel. Another side is I actually appreciate it when I see, obviously if you're up against a defense counsel like your firm, you guys are very good. You know what you're doing. It's more challenging. But I find it more intellectually stimulating as compared to when you get, a lot of times you'll get a defense counsel who's like, I won't make any disparaging remarks, but somebody who's definitely not in this type of complex litigation field. And it's not as fun for me to get the win. And obviously you run a business, the win's a win, but I like the mental challenge. I like the fight.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And by the way, I knew you were a fighter. Like, I didn't know that. You never told me that. I could just tell. Like, there's just something about guys that are really fighters versus guys that are not. You know what I mean? You know what I mean.
Yeah.
I like that answer a lot. And I can really, like, every once in a while, very rarely, every once in a while, we'll get stuck in like a state court thing with some yokel. And inevitably, like, we just crush the poor guy. And like, I try to get excited about it, but it's just hard, to be honest with you. Like, I don't like picking on people. And when it's like, you're plainly better resourced, you're plainly better, like, capable, right? And you're going in there and it's like you and your top 3 lawyers and you're rolling in with your assistants and they're going in there all by themselves and they're just completely outgunned. It just doesn't feel great. Like, I mean, you take the win, you're doing it for your client, right? And you did your job and you walk away and you high five and it's great. But like, I would much rather be going against a Peronic or, or a Boss or Greenwald, like guys that will push you, guys that are at your level. With Greenwald, I swear to God, there's days I got off the phone with Greenwald, I'm like, that guy, he's just smarter than me, like I'm going to find a way to beat him because I always manage to, right? But it's like, I'm Iron Man fighting Thanos. I mean, that guy's faster than me, he's bigger than me, he's stronger than me, right? But like, I somehow find a way because that's just the way it works. But I love that, right? Like, for me, that's what it's all about. Not to go in there and just like pick on somebody that, I mean, just.
I don't know, you probably don't know this. You just reminded me. So Greenwald, he was like a mentor of mine at Robbins Geller. We worked together.
I knew that, actually. That I did know. That I did know, believe it or not. Yeah, he's mentioned you to me actually before. And that's how I knew, because he was at Robbins too. And I mean, Greenwald, like I talk about that guy positively, because he's just a monster. And thank God he would rather fish than work, because otherwise.
Greenwald for sure. The guy is he's a very impressive mind.
Yeah, no doubt. So do you have a good referral network? I mean, you're bringing in a lot of cases now. Are you relying on like repeat players that you had before? Like, what's your model to kind of grow? Do you want to stay small? Like what's the future for Chris?
Honestly, it's only been a year. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, my vision of what it would look like to have my law firm has changed so much since before I became a lawyer to after I became a lawyer to when I finally started it. It resembles nothing of how I imagined it. I imagined, maybe kind of naive, like, I don't know, the Lincoln lawyer type guy. Like, I was just going to like set up an office and, be banging out briefs all day and, like that's it. But that's not what happened. It kind of organically grew and I see on the horizon it's going to grow a lot more. And to be honest, I was just really blessed. I created a lot of really good relationships in my career. To me, relationships are very important for me with everybody, whether we're fighting, not fighting. I enjoy fighting, even in a real fight. At the end of the fight, you shake hands and your buddies. It's all good. I like it. But I have always prioritized having good relationships with people and, people I work with, people I'm against. And because of that, from literally the day I started, I had referrals coming in. When I was researching to start my law firm for many years, I didn't have the guts for many years, but I had the desire forever. So I would always do, little informational interviews with people who started their own firm. And a lot of people, I'm sure you know this, a lot of, solo or small firm people are very unsophisticated in their kind of marketing. Like they kind of just like hope it comes and the clients come. And that's what they would tell me. They would say they'd been in business for a few years and I'd ask them about how they get clients. And they'd say, almost all of them, I think, would say, no, I don't do any marketing. Like the clients just come. Don't worry, the clients will come. I remember thinking, I'm like, gosh, I've been a lawyer for 7 years. Like I have never gotten a referral. Like no one has ever come to me with a referral, before I opened a firm. But when I opened it, I just, putting the word out there, like, hey, I opened up my own firm. And man, like the floodgates opened. Literally, I was so fortunate. You're scared when you open your own firm, but right out the gate, I was getting clients, good clients, people I was really happy to work with. People showed an outpouring of support. I was surprised at like how generous people were with their time and their clients. It was really nice. So I started, so it's a lot. I have a lot of referrals. I also am super interested in business as kind of a concept and as a craft, and how to build a business and how to build out marketing and build out processes and all of those types of things. So I have been doing some marketing, and I have been getting clients that way. So it's kind of just kind of organically been evolving that way. And like I said, my initial vision for myself was like probably just me solo with no one else. I have, I have a sizable team now growing. I like to grow further, and I don't know, I'm really enjoying. Another thing I never really saw myself as was kind of a boss, kind of like a leader. It was, some people are attracted to that because they want to have the mustache and have the authority and tell people I'm your boss and tell them what to do. I was never really attracted to that. Yeah, you have a goatee. That has authority too. I was never really attracted to that. I like working with people more as a kind of a teammate. But my team grew, and people were really responding to my leadership style, and it seems like they all like the way I support them. So I'm getting a lot out of that. Mentoring people, coaching people. I have some young attorneys who have aligned themselves with me, and maybe it's from the fighting background, the coaching background. It's something I've really enjoyed doing. So I don't know exactly what the future is going to hold for me. I'm going to keep just allowing things to happen organically, but it's not implausible that who knows, in the future I would have a really big firm, much larger than I ever imagined. I would like to I love the TCPA. I'm completely in love with it, but I also do love general consumer work. The work that I did at Robbins Geller, I would love to be able to focus more on the false advertising stuff I used to do, and all sorts of things like that. So that's just let it happen organically. Keep doing good work, as they say. Keep being a good guy to people, and just seeing how I'm rewarded with that.
No, and look, that's always. I think I've said this before on the podcast. Like, just be a good person and it'll all work out, was advice I've given kind of from the start. But I will tell you this. This is fascinating. This is what I've discovered, because when I first started the firm, it was just Britney and I, and we had so many more clients than we expected. Like the outpouring of support, you remember, it was insane. Like it was like rocket ship to the moon, right? And then we brought in a bunch of folks, and it's interesting because then we started to deploy resources, reinvest into marketing. And what I have discovered, I think now we're about 3 years into this, is that people are incredibly supportive, will go out of their way to help you when you're getting started. But once they think that you've succeeded, they actually kind of back off the support a little bit, which is fascinating. Now, your clients are going to stay loyal to you. They're not going to bail on you. No, we don't lose clients. Our clients are here. They're our clients forever. But the pace of new clients coming in, oddly, has actually slowed down since we've ramped up the marketing. So I think what's going to happen, it's kind of like you go from like in Top Gun, when he was racing that big, fast airplane, it would go from the regular jet to the scramjet, right? It would have to, you actually lose momentum for a second as you go off of goodwill and friendship to true brand awareness. And then it goes to that. It's a whole nother level. So we're in that weird transition phase where it's all right, people know Troutman and Amin. They're right, Troutman, you're this big success, so we're not going to go out of our way to send you every little buddy we can find, because there's other smaller firms that are just starting up. We want to support them, which, by the way, I love that. I support that. We were just there 3 years ago. You know what I mean? So I want to see those little guys get their start too. But now we're okay, let's hope we can really push it to the stratosphere, because it starts to get scary. In the very, very beginning, it's scary. Then it was so unscary. It was the only scary thing is we have so much work to do. How can we get it all done? And now we're we've got that scale, right? There's a lot of us now. We got 10 lawyers. We're still hiring. So we're going to have 13, 14 attorneys, big staff, right? And so now we've got to keep it going using not just our organic networks, which can't sustain that size, but also actually hoping for all the brand awareness and the exercises that we're doing to actually pay off. So we'll see. That's at that next level. But I love it. I love that you've got your stable spot, that you're growing up, that you've got some other areas of law that you're interested in. Very fascinating. So the ladies wanted to ask you some questions. Usually I just ask all the questions, but Tori in particular, I know, had a few thoughts. So Tori, what do you got?
Well, I think you covered most of it, but I am curious, what kind of marketing does a plaintiff's firm do? What do you do for marketing? I know I see like the Instagram ads for the CIPA cases. What do you do for TCPA cases?
Well, I know you have to be familiar with who I consider the king of this stuff, Mr. Jabril Hindi. And I'll also give take my hat off to you, Eric. It's interesting for me, and I'll get back to your question. It's interesting for me to see, as I said, being kind of like a nerding out on the whole business thing, from the outside, it's interesting to hear you speaking openly about concerns and struggling and the goals and not reaching there. But then from the outside, like, you're the type of business, you're the type of guy who has really, from my perspective, really figured out the brand penetration. And, you're all over. You're here with the podcast. You have the blog. And, I think from the defense side, I mean, your name must be synonymous with TCPA defense. I don't know any other TCPA firm that's just, not that any TCPA firm would be a household name, but definitely. I think you're doing it right, but it just shows, no one's, everyone's has their own internal struggles and while they're trying to reach their aspirations. But thank you for sharing that. But as far as plaintiffs marketing, it's very broad. There's a lot of plaintiffs lawyers, obviously, who don't do any, and it really depends on the niche. But what happens, something that I kind of learned when I was like starting my firm, I guess it's funny. All right, so my style. My style, I'm very minimalist. I like black and white, like, typewriter typography, things like that. And I had one really generous marketing guy. I wasn't going to hire him, but he just gave me 1 million bits of free information on a call one day. And he looked at my, I think I had a website or a letterhead or something that was just very formal, simple lines like I like. And he was saying, Chris, maybe this would be good if you represented businesses and you want to be more formal, but you have to understand, like, consumers, they're trained to be consumers. So what does that mean? That means they go on the shelf and they see the colorful cereal box and here's the big number, and here they go on Instagram and here's the videos. So he says, try to fit yourself into that common consumer kind of habit, right? Which is, they're accustomed to seeing, colors. So my logo, if you notice, it's like red. I don't really like colors, but I put red because it, pops. It looks like a Nintendo logo, I guess somebody told me.
Chris, your last name is Gold, right? I'm just gonna throw that out there, man. but yeah. That's fine.
A couple of little accent pieces like that. When you go out, one little piece of jewelry, it's my last name, Gold. But the rest of me is very, very minimalist. But yeah, so in marketing, what I found works really well is just a real kind of authentic face-to-face, those user-generated ads where you're just talking to your phone. People really love that because that's what they're used to seeing all day on Instagram. A challenge I'll share with you guys, is with all types of consumer law, it's, a lot of consumers, they don't realize that they have rights with these stuff. So TCPA, you'll see a ton of people complaining about, I'm getting all these calls, I'm on the do not call list, still getting calls. They don't know that they could take after you register your number on the do not call list, a lot of them don't realize you could take it a step further if you're still being harassed. So it's, education's a part of it. And then just fitting in right side by side with all the consumer stuff that they're being exposed to. So I think Instagram, where most people are, Facebook to a lesser extent, and just very organic, talking to the people type of marketing is really where it's at and what's been working for a lot of people.
Tori, you think about going out on your own? Is that where that question came from? She doesn't deny it. Ladies, any questions? Britt? No?
I have one. Who would win in a fight, you or Jabril?
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Stirring up the
girl is a beast. I don't know if I could wrap my arms around that guy's upper body. So I don't know. I guess that's going to get too easy one day. Hopefully it never comes to that. That's I have a lot of respect for that.
All right, that's a good question. Right, nothing? All right, well, look, on that note, Chris, you've been a fantastic guest. I love this conversation. Look, the name of the podcast is, as you can tell on the sign back here, Deserve to Win. So let me ask you, what can people do? You can answer this however you want. What can people do, plaintiffs do, businesses do, the world do? In your opinion, what's Chris Gold's best advice to deserve to win?
Hold yourself to a standard of excellence. Doesn't matter who's watching. Just hold yourself to the highest standard of excellence in everything that you do, and you'll win.
Wow, that was like less TCPA, like more business, like background. That guy he's kind of got something going. I like his brand integrity concept. I kind of like where he's coming from. I don't know. I've got some thoughts here, but let's start with you, ladies. Britt, what'd you think?
I thought it was a great interview. Like, normally when we interview plaintiffs' lawyers, they come off really, like, slimy and sleazy, and I really didn't get that much from Chris Gold. Maybe you guys had a different perspective, but I didn't really get that from him. I really enjoyed listening to how he, went off to start his own firm, because, like, just like you and just like us, we started our own firm 3 years ago, and it's interesting to see how he did it on the plaintiff side and to hear, like, what he looks for in getting clients and building his own brand and all that stuff. I thought it was interesting. He did say the one thing that he looked for was, evaluating whether a case was good, was the size of a defendant, because, you hear from Pronic and other plaintiffs' counsels that don't even care about the size of the defendant or what kind of revenue they bring in. So I thought that was an interesting thing that maybe makes him stand out from the other plaintiffs' attorneys.
I like the no slimy acknowledgement, because I agree. Like, in that it was kind of to me, it was kind of dangerous, right? Because I'm like, wait a second, he plainly is slimy.
Yeah,
he must be slimy. Yeah, you're definitely slimy, but yet the slime dar doesn't go off with him. That makes him very dangerous. Like, you don't want to see plaintiff's lawyers with a bunch of credibility. I don't like that. That can be tricky. Tori, what'd you think?
Well, for him, more so than any other plaintiff's counsel that we've had on here, he really gave a clear picture of what it was like to represent plaintiffs and how it felt to do that, and, his little old lady story.
Yeah, look at that.
Again, dangerous.
Yeah, he's actually making an impact for somebody that's like actually likable and actually doing something good for them, as opposed to just, ripping off small businesses like most of these guys do. Yeah, no, he's an interesting character. Did you like the answer he gave you to your question?
He's not responsive on what he is actually doing for marketing, but, he did give a clear indication of what it's like marketing for plaintiffs' firms.
Well, I was surprised he said Jibril was the king of it. I had no idea that Jibril even did much marketing.
I don't know. From a marketing perspective, I think he does a lot. Jibril does.
On Instagram, at least.
Yeah.
I see the CIPA ones, but I never see the TCPA ones, so that's why I was kind of curious there.
It's interesting. Puja, Queenie, what do you think?
Oh, you guys are all being fooled. These plaintiffs' attorneys get together. They know exactly what to say on screen, right? So let's not be fooled. Let's think about the best interest of our clients. Agreed. He was better trained than the rest. He knew exactly what to say, but just kidding. But maybe he was trained really well, right? He is a fighter. He's an actor. He has that background of being an athlete, as most of us do here at our law firm. He knows what it takes to win, right? And he showcased that, right? Whether it's the truth or not, I'm always very skeptical, especially with those people on the other side. So I take everything with a grain of salt. But did he appear to be a no scumbag, no slimy type guy? He certainly did. It could be because he just started his own firm, right? So it could be a marketing pitch to be friendly with consumers, taking that approach that I really, really care about you, come to me. Who knows? TCPAWorld gets a lot of guests, a lot of hitters. Consumers may be on TCPAWorld.com, right? He may get picked up. So I appreciated his honesty. I appreciated the fact that he wasn't coming on like a Pronic who's like, he's an expert. He's been in this industry for a while. He knows what he's looking at. And he's just like, look, get me what I want. Otherwise, don't call me, right? Gold is still starting his practice. So he is using that kind of kindness approach, right? Kind of getting familiar with the industry. So I'm a little bit cautious, but agreed that he was friendlier and less slimy than the rest.
So we had Alex Krusik on the show not long ago, and we called him like the baby shark, right? I don't know. I got to tell you, and Alex, no disrespect, like Chris came across a lot more sophisticated, and like it was interesting because Alex, grew up directly under Greenwald. Chris didn't, at least not lately. So it's just fascinating. I mean, it really is. Trump and Amin, right? We've got chapter 1, like all the real core hitters. And then underneath, we've got these new babies that are coming up, but they're monsters. Oh my God, Tamina and Maxwell, monsters. Blake, a monster. Kayla, Steven, these guys are monsters, right? And you look at the plaintiff's bar and you're starting to see that same thing, right? Like it's generational. Like I've been here long enough to see a generational shift, and it's happening like right in front of our eyes. And guys like Chris Gold, I mean, is he a monster today? I don't know, maybe, but he is a monster 5-10 years from now, no question.
That's why you have to be cautious.
He's a piranha in the making.
yeah.
Be cautious.
No question about it. So look, let me, man, I like talking to him. And like we talked about like Trump and Amin's arc, and it's interesting because we don't really talk about this stuff publicly. Like we're incredibly successful. We're incredibly grateful. I'm so fortunate every day. But by the same token, it is interesting like when you start your own firm, the momentum that you have when you first start, because everybody wants to help you to succeed. And it's a wonderful thing. It's so wonderful, when you have that community and everyone wants to help you. And then you get to a certain point and, you get to 10 lawyers and it's like, all right, like goodwill is not going to sustain you, right? Like your buddies and pals and friends are not going to sustain you. Like you've got to be able to have a marketing game plan, something that's go to market and something that's going to be able to lift and push you to that next level, right? We could stay at like 5-6 lawyers forever, right? But we're looking to expand what is ultimately, we think, right, good for society, which is the deserve to win model, a business model that treats people right, that treats clients right, that treats associates and attorneys and everybody right. And so we want to see that grow. We don't want to see that stay small. But in order to take it to the next level, like you've really got to see something else catch fire. Right. And it's really fascinating because we were where he was just a couple years ago, right? But what we're trying to get is something like completely a different level. And it's interesting to see. So we continue to love all of you. And those of you that are listening to the Deserve to Win podcast, you know that we love you. And hopefully you got something really fascinating about this, out of this. I know we did. Look, we told you earlier in the show, by the time this comes out, Law Conference of Champions is just going to be not that long from now. If you love us, you want to support us, you want to be part of Trump and Amin taking over the world, making it a better place, come out to Alcock. If it's still available when you see this, it might be sold out by then. If not, virtual tickets are available. Get yourself a virtual ticket. Hang out for the ride. We'd love to have you. Until next time, though, thanks for tuning into this, our 32nd edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.